I'd like to talk to you a little bit about performance. Like why? So I don't use ESLint
Sure.
at all. Like at all. In fact, if you write like npm create next app and you want to create a new Next.js app, it asks you, do you want to use ESLint? And the default is no. And a big reason for this is performance. Like I work on an M1 MacBook Pro, and for work I have an M3 MacBook Pro. And even with this, with VS Code, my laptop starts levitating because of the fans. Usually when ESLint is on some larger project. So this may be a little bit of hyperbole, but I would be surprised if I was the only one asking this. Why is it so slow? Is it a combination of VS Code being an Electron app running this and the ESLint language server? I just, like this. It's a complete black box to those of us outside of the project. You know?
ESLint is not actually that slow. I would assume it's other tools causing this. Are you sure that it's ESLint that's giving you levitation?
Yeah, because when I disable the plugin, everything just responds pretty rapidly. So it could also be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it could also just be the amount of plugins, right? There's usually not just TypeScript ESLint. There's accessibility plugins. There's code style plugins that work in tandem with Prettier. There's just a whole slew of plugins. So maybe it's that. Could it be that? I assume, since you mentioned how the caching works, it's one file at a time. N plugins need to run on this file, N being just an arbitrary number. Could that be why?
It could be the number of VS Code extensions, but if you're saying that it's specifically you turn off or on just the ESLint one, yeah. I would say two things. One, by itself, ESLint is fine for performance. It's almost always misconfiguration, from what I've seen, that results in performance issues. However, actually three things. That's one. Two, it's too easy to misconfigure. This shouldn't be the case. The tool is not doing enough to stop us from oopsieing. And three, there are a lot of performance issues when you start introducing cross-file linting, like with typed linting or with the import plugin that analyzes your imports. So even if you've completely configured it correctly, it might still be the case that you've just got a huge project and you're using expensive linting and the structure has not been built up to support that. So which of those areas do you think is you?
I think it's a skill issue, as you said, misconfiguration. I hear misconfiguration, I just think skill issue. To be fair, I seldom am the one who sets up the plugin. I more just like inherit a code base, clone it, npm install, open, and like when I'm 5 files in, like things start to, and the things that start to go wrong is usually the squigglies are stale. So there's and so I confirm this by I'll just reload VS Code and everything catches up. I also experience this with TypeScript from time to time, but it's very seldom. It happens more common in ESLint that some lint rule is playing up. I can't for the life of me figure out why. I think I went on Twitter once and posted a screenshot of this, and the caption was "Go home, ESLint, you're drunk." And then I reloaded it, and it got better. So I do think it's misconfiguration. I think it's also extension or plugin overload, not VS Code extension, but ESLint extension, because we had a lot of plugins for a lot of different things, including like CSS and JS plugins and like a whole slew of them. So to extend the question, not just to be all complainy about it, if there's listeners with slow ESLint configurations, what are some configuration hacks to help ESLint be faster or to like improve, because it's so easy to misconfigure? What are some ideal configuration patterns?
Remove anything to do with Prettier. There are quite a few steps. This is by far and away the most commonly impactful one. A lot of people use ESLint plugin Prettier. An ESLint plugin Prettier's job. Stop.
I use that.
Stop doing that, Tejas. Please. That's probably why your ESLint is slow. Not definitely, but probably. ESLint plugin Prettier runs Prettier within an ESLint rule. So for each AST or each file, it passes I think probably just either the AST or the text of the file to Prettier, runs Prettier, gets the result back for every file. On its own, that's not that bad. But if you have other expensive ESLint rules, every time you hit save, then Prettier runs, all those rules run. Then it gets fixed for your formatting things. Then everything runs again. If you have multiple rules with fixtures, you're doing everything over and over and over again. It becomes a whole cycle, because when you auto fix, it runs up to 10 or 11 times to keep exhausting the rules. It keeps rerunning them. So there's no actual. I do not. approve as a human of running Prettier inside ESLint. I strongly recommend using that as a separate tool so that those separate tools can optimize each thing for what run cycle it's best for.
So as part of your build pipeline, you run ESLint -- fix, get all the fixes, get everything sorted, and then run Prettier on it as sort of the final boss.
In builds, I wouldn't run with -- fix. If you mean just like in running locally, then yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So on CI you wouldn't do fix because that will just change your code, and then you can't commit it anyway. Yeah. And then it's probably going to be green because it's fixed, but the code is not fixed. Yeah. I see that. Yeah. Awesome. Just one more thing, just to tie back to, we talked about ASTs and compilers and so on. I think it's just worth mentioning for the listeners that -- fix works exactly as you'd expect. So you get this big JavaScript object, and you just like change, var to let, and then you rewrite the file, right? You just call fs-read. So it's fs-read file, parse into AST, read AST, find problem, replace that node in the object, and then you convert it to a stringify it, and then write it to the file. I assume that's how it works, but I just wanted to get that clear for the listeners also.
I do want to note on the performance stuff.
Good.
Most of the time when people have slow performance, it's because they're using cross-file linting. The import plugin has some known rules that are slow when used with TypeScript stuff, and we actually have an FAQ on the TypeScript ESLint site for performance with type linting, suggesting which rules are still useful and which you should really turn off. But if your TypeScript is slow, like if it takes a second to compute type information for a file and you're using type linting, your type linting is going to take probably at least a second. So we see a lot of people who come to us blaming ESLint because that's what they experience as slowness. But the root cause was they had some ridiculous, 3,000 level ternary nested conditional type in TypeScript that was slowing everything.
Can type linting be turned on and off via configuration param? In the TypeScript
the way it works is individual rules will have like a little meta documentation thing saying whether they're typed, and we actually provide for each of our recommended configs a version with and a version without typed linting. So like recommended and then also recommended type checked. So you can completely avoid type linting and all the wonderful benefits of it if you're not ready for that performance discussion.
Awesome. Have you used TypeScript in the enterprise? Like, have you consulted for TypeScript in like very large, 2 million people? Well, maybe not 2 million, but very large enterprise settings. And is that somehow different from the like on the ground developers that you talk to?
Often super different. I have done the occasional consulting call or little gig. For the most part, the bigger the company, the bigger the code base. That's not always true, but often is. So you end up getting more performance scenarios being the root cause rather than teach us how to TypeScript. Like bigger companies have more resources and then also like logically bigger challenges. But yeah, I think that TypeScript's been doing a lot of work the last few years for the enterprise use case, and they just released isolated declarations, which is going to be really helpful for really big code bases. That's a way to like, they have an existing system called project references, which lets you split up your TypeScript build steps into projects, and isolated declarations is a really, really nice way to make that a lot faster.